I'm John Bennett. I'm running for United States Congress for District 2. I've been all over the eastern end of the state of Oklahoma, and I've been asked by tribal and non-tribal citizens what I think about the McGirt decision. So, in case you're not familiar with the McGirt decision, it involved a man by the name of Jimsy McGirt who was convicted of repeatedly raping a 4-year-old girl. So he was tried and convicted in state court, and he was sentenced to a couple of life sentences in prison. However, he challenged the sentence by stating that he was a tribal citizen and he committed the crime on the Muskogee Creek Nation Reservation. Therefore, McGirt argued that the state court had no jurisdiction to try and convict him. And the challenge made it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and they ruled in favor of McGirt and overturned his conviction. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that since the United States government had never disestablished the Muskogee Creek Reservation in eastern Oklahoma through congressional action, the state did not have jurisdiction to prosecute. And not only that, the Oklahoma Court of Criminals Appeals has extended that same Supreme Court ruling to the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Quapaw, and Seminole reservations. So basically, all of eastern Oklahoma is considered Indian country under federal law. This decision has completely weakened the state from enforcing the law in most of the state of Oklahoma. So if a tribal member or citizen commits a crime, then the case has to be handled by the tribal police and tribal courts or turned over to the FBI and the federal courts. The state cannot prosecute these cases any longer. Now, this may sound minimal. However, the tribal courts are not set up to take on these cases. Not to mention, when a case gets sent to tribal courts, they have a very low minimum punishment for offenders. Now, the tribal and federal courts have been completely overwhelmed by what's going on. And anyone who is a tribal citizen that commits a crime in the state of Oklahoma, primarily in the eastern end of Oklahoma, and non-tribal law enforcement officer is called to take care of it, they have to detain them and wait for the tribal police and or the FBI to take over the case. So since this ruling, it's been reported that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tulsa and Muskogee and the FBI have struggled to keep up with these caseloads. And the Justice Department, they told the United States Congress that the focus on violent crimes means that suspects in nonviolent prosecutions aren't being prosecuted at all. This decision by the U.S. Supreme Court has caused havoc and is dividing Oklahomans on the basis of ancestry. As Oklahomans, I believe we are all proud of our Native American history and culture. However, we are all Oklahomans and we should all be under the same law. Under the McGirt decision, justice is being undone with those let out of prison who have actually committed rape, murder, and other violent crimes. A lot of crimes just aren't being prosecuted or they're being plea bargained down to nothing. So the victims of these crimes are the ones who suffer the most because there's no justice for the victims. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling McGirt versus Oklahoma has put into question the sovereignty of the state as we've known it, the state of Oklahoma as we've known it since 1907, and it has created some very serious public safety concerns for all Oklahomans. Not only has the McGirt decision put into question the sovereignty of the state of Oklahoma, it's also causing all kinds of other consequences as well. For instance, the McGirt ruling undermines the private property rights of every single resident in eastern Oklahoma. And under the McGirt decision, the land on which Oklahomans have built their homes or businesses could be both taxed and regulated by the tribal government. No politician who has taken money from the tribes wants to admit this or address it, but it is an undisputable legal fact. And the focus on the impact of the McGirt decision on criminal justice issues, which is a very serious one, doesn't take into consideration all the other issues that need to be considered as well, like private property rights. The average home or business owner could get a property tax bill from the tribes on top of the taxes that they already pay to the county. And at the same time, the tribes could regulate the property owner's ability to improve their property, alter their property, or expand the structures on their property, whether you're a tribal member or not. It represents the potential for taxation without representation. I think it's very important to note here that the U.S. Supreme Court has stated that the issues caused by the McGirt case is for the U.S. Congress to address. As a matter of fact, on page 36 through 42 of the court's opinion, they stated in part that Congress remains free to supplement its statutory directions about the lands in question at any time. So Congress must fix this. Here's some other very important considerations. We have to ask the question, who will regulate Oklahoma business under the McGirt decision? Who owns the water rights in Oklahoma? Who has the authority to tax? The state or the tribes? Who pays income tax, sales tax, or any other tax? And then who's going to receive public services based off the tax that you pay or don't pay? I mean, this has the great potential to limit or reduce public service going to all citizens, depending on if they pay the tax or not. So you got to ask the question, who owns the oil and gas in the ground as well? Further, per the Supreme Court, the tribe's socialistic forms of government are not required to recognize the Bill of Rights that guarantees all citizens individual freedoms, specifically the Second Amendment. Now, I'm sure you all know that our Bill of Rights are found in the first 10 amendments to our U.S. Constitution. So why would we allow tribal and non-tribal citizens constitutional rights to be taken away by extending socialism to half of the state under the McGirt ruling? And finally, the state of Oklahoma is outlawing abortion. Will the tribes allow women to continue to murder their unborn babies since half of Oklahoma falls under the McGirt decision and is now considered a reservation? The fact of the matter is this: the casino bosses and corrupt tribal governments are the ones benefiting from the McGirt ruling. It's the tribal and non-tribal members who are the ones that are actually left hanging out to dry. You know, I spoke up about the detrimental effects of the McGirt decision back in April of this year, and I stated that the only fix can come from Congress, and Congress should fix this, according to the Supreme Court ruling. I was attacked by the corrupt casino bosses as trying to take away tribal sovereignty. This is a lie, and it's just simply not the case. Nothing will change the tribe's sovereignty. Fixing this issue through Congress will simply put things back to the way they were the day prior to the McGirt decision at the Supreme Court, when everything seemed to be working out just fine and the tribal and non-tribal government relationships seemed to be okay. Now, I'm sure there'll be other pushback as well. So when I speak up about the real problems here, the first thing they will typically say is, oh, he's a racist, because that's how the cancel culture works. And it takes the focus off of the facts that are being discussed. Well, in reply to that, I would submit this: it is not racist or unreasonable to stand up for the private property rights of every Oklahoman, tribal and non-tribal members. How about we reserve the name calling and get to the table and get this fixed so it benefits all Oklahomans? I assure you this: I will never waver in my efforts to protect the private property rights or the Bill of Rights of every Oklahoman, nor will I take campaign contributions from those who would undermine those rights. Yes, tribes are dependent sovereigns, which means they have the right to govern internal affairs, but not over non-tribal members. The violation of all Oklahomans' rights under McGirt must be addressed by the United States Congress immediately, and that is what I intend to do as your next United States Congressman. My name is John Bennett. You can find me at johnbennettforcongress.com. And I assure you this: I will always fight for our God bless constitutional republic, and we the people, all Oklahomans. So God bless you, and God bless the great state of Oklahoma. And vote for John Bennett for Congress on June the 28th. And remember this: Bennett is in it to win it.